had an answer to the question, what are you going to do next? And when you're in a system, it's predetermined, right? But it also gives you so much anxiety. Like, here's this really smart kid who didn't max their 10th, could not do science, could not get through this particular college, and we pathologize the child.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's something wrong with you, and you free that person from this edifice of predetermined milestones, and they thrive.
The intergenerational transmission of what teachers also end up passing, because they are frustrated. They are dealing with their own mental health. Teaching is a badly paid profession in general. It's undervalued.
School teachers definitely.
They are burnt out to another level, which I just don't know how they're coping. And that does filter down to the children.
But some of that we're also not modeling. And then we expect our children to do it, which is, something I have to keep reminding myself. If I want my child to read, I need to be reading as opposed to being on my phone. If I want my child to play sports, then they have to grow up in an environment where, that's part of our life in some way. And for some reason, we want our children to do the things we never did. Why would we do that?
My biggest learning as a parent, you want them to do it, you do it. Yeah. You want them to go out in the park, you go out.
Yeah.
And you want them to watch quality cinema.
You should watch it. Yeah.
Don't put on Real Housewives, Getty.
No, we don't watch Real Housewives together.
Hi everyone, we are here today in conversation with Natasha Badhwar, who is, professionally she's known for many roles that she plays, a writer, an author, a teacher of media studies at Ashoka University. But most importantly, she's here today for our podcast in the capacity of a mother. So she comes in with a lot of lived experience, and she's going to teach us all a little bit about unschooling. So Natasha, turning to you, could you help us all understand what the concept of unschooling looks like?
And also, how is it different from homeschooling? Is there a difference, or is it just a cooler word for homeschooling?
Yeah, always look for the cooler word.
Always.
But what first came to my mind was that you've almost never used the word teaching and unschooling in the same sentence, because it's like we are talking unparenting. We kind of go towards unteaching, as in people, we are born to learn.
Yeah,
that's the basic human instinct, and the animal instinct as well. Nobody teaches animals what to do things, and there's lots of things that human beings seek naturally. And at some point in civilization, we created very structured lives. It kind of goes back to industrialization. Factories, parents needed to be out of homes, they needed to have structured work lives, as opposed to the agrarian lifestyle, where you walked out of home to your field and came back, took your children with you to work and came back. So the structured life of adults then needed a very structured life for children. And schooling kind of, the schooling as we know it now, where children go early in the morning and spend most of the day there, and their first 18 years of their life is defined by the routine, the structure, the rhythm of school life, is relatively new, is relatively 150 to 100 years in human civilization. And in the introduction, you've kind of mentioned that my children stopped going to school. So and unschooling is it's a worldwide trend. It's a smaller community of people, and many of them do it in their own different ways. But ever since there has been schooling, there's been unschooling, as in people and children who have felt that they don't fit, that they don't want to, that they're not able to, kind of conform to the routine that they are being forced into, and that there are ways in which they'll do things differently. And let me drop names. Einstein's one of them, right?
Yeah.
He was sent to school. He was labeled a slow kid. He didn't speak till about 6 years.
Yeah.
Uh, the little Einstein's mother takes it upon herself to kind of cater to her child's needs. And that child, because they are allowed to follow what is their special interest, then becomes one of the greatest inventors and scientists and wise, wise persons, an intellectual for the ages. A lot of artists, musicians. We look back into our lives, and a lot of us find that we've all had some or the other unschooling phase. That there's been some moment in our own lives where we have felt that what is the mainstream idea of success is not quite fitting for me, that I need to do something differently. Sometimes it leaves us thinking, I'm not good enough. Most of the times it leaves us thinking, there's a system, everybody else is being able to deal with it. Something's not okay with me. But with time, we often discover that all my psyche is asking for is the autonomy to follow its own rhythm and its own, its own special interest. And I'll come to your question, homeschooling versus unschooling. So schooling, you go to school and you learn according to the curriculum. Homeschooling, you stay at home and you study according to the age-appropriate curriculum that schools have defined in your times. Unschooling, you create your own curriculum. You do not at age 10 have to reach this particular milestone of literacy, or age 16 reach this particular milestone of literacy. You literally give yourself the complete freedom and autonomy to figure out what it is that you want to learn at what age. And it's very much led by the child themselves. So unschooling, it's been a roller coaster of a journey. It's not only been about the children's learning, it's been about the parents' learning.
Absolutely.
It's been so much about unlearning, about stepping back, and everything that I had taught myself about good parenting, having to question that. And also teach yourself to live with a fair amount of uncertainty. Because you're not going to have somebody give you a certificate at the end of it.
Yeah.
So I had a question, and I really want to go into your personal compulsions at what led you down this path. But one of my obvious questions is, what happens? Because I'd worked on a curriculum for a school in Bhutan, and the brief was that do something different. We don't want the regular curriculum. So we went very different. We were like, there will be no subjects. You will learn like big history. And in that, you will learn like science and everything within that. And we want to focus on skills like critical thinking, communication, and not like rote learning. So we come up with this beautiful curriculum. And then we're told by the government of Bhutan that, well, the kids need to get into college and they need to sit the board exams, and your curriculum isn't covering any of that.
Yeah.
So our curriculum was actually 2 years of work was scrapped pretty much. And they had to really come up with something that was, they had to cover the curriculum so that they could sit the baccalaureate and that they could get into universities. Did you struggle with this, or were you okay with your children paving their own path? Were you worried, okay, what is higher education going to look like? What is the workforce going to look like? Or were you like, I have confidence in their skills and their ability to figure it out?
So I suppose that the most accurate answer is that everything's a journey. You can't be comfortable with, stepping off the wheel and knowing that you will not be qualified to go to college if you don't take the board exam. You will not be ready to take the board exam unless you've been through a certain rigor that the school provides. There are also rules about what age you must take them, what kind of prerequisites are required for a board exam, for a college admission, for higher education. So you know that when you step off that mainstream education, kind of roller coaster, that you're going to come across a lot of uncertainty. What really helped me and our family was that we only really began to walk this path after we discovered a community of people in India who practice homeschooling and unschooling and natural living in their own individual ways, but across the country. And I'll name the community that they get together every year in one large get together. It's called the Learning Societies Unconference.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Un.parent.
Yeah.
Unlearning.
Yeah. And then there's another annual get together that's called Swashikshan Abhiyan Meet. So Swashikshan, self-education, self-learning, and like Abhiyan, a movement. And then there are lots of communities in different parts of the country. There's a place in Udaipur called Swaraj University. Autonomy.
Yeah.
So borrowing the word from the independence movement. That I will decide. I will look for my own mentors. I will find my own learning systems, and I'll define what my career is going to be like. So we didn't know, but we remained. But once we kind of met other people who were ahead of us, we met other young people who seemed fine, sorted, happy. That gave us the confidence that whatever it's going to be like, you're not alone.
So I'm going to actually bring the focus to Natasha. Yes, because I think you're pointing to a very important concept that you said the word mainstream, and the question is who makes it the mainstream. So that there's a little bit of rewinding to do for all of us over there. That the system of CBSE and ICSE and boards and schools and going to school is man-made at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you talked about finding community. So automatically, when you find other people who you can lean on, and learn from, there is a certain sense of courage that it lends you.
Absolutely.
But I want to ask you, as having known that we went to the same school, and I know I have bashed my school previously on this podcast.
You don't have to do it again.
Let's all face it that DPS Arkipuram is popularly or colloquially known as the factory. That focuses on, you're not known by your name there, you're known by your grades and the ranks. And
it's academic focus.
Yes. And as someone who pretty much fit those bills, I would say effortlessly, in the sense that I followed the systems, and I still do in a way. I don't, because now I'm a private practitioner and I have my own problems with the system. How much of your schooling, your experience of being schooled, schooling, and being parented impacted your decision, and how so?
And also your husband's, because, and I want to add that because there's another podcast that I was listening to, and you said that every time you all would go for like a school interview for your children, he would say, I don't care if you take my child or not. I went to a village school, I turned out fine.
Yes.
So obviously this must have been a joint decision. But yeah, how much did your backgrounds influence this decision to unschool your children?
Pretty hugely. Yeah. So, my generation of school kids, most of us had first generation middle class parents. We had first generation graduate parents, first generation urban parents. Certainly I did, and many of my schoolmates did. And their big concern now, this is people coming of age in the 60s, 70s, 80s, adults coming of age. So this new country, and it's peaking in progress, and India is becoming more and more global. So their concerns, their anxieties were डॉक्टर बनाना है, इंजीनियर बनाना है, इंग्लिश पढ़ना है, अमेरिका जाना है. My father was like, get a good education, get out. I didn't. Some of my peers did. And you'll speak better English than me, etc. sounded like a decent plan. We went to our convent schools, and so my parents' entire focus, almost every decision they took about moving cities, about moving jobs, was where can we get the best mainstream education for our children. And I landed in DPS Arkipuram because it was the best school in the city at that time. Yeah, and for them it was the pinnacle. But what was my lived experience? I had grown up in a small town called Ranchi, gone to a small school, the elite school of Ranchi, Loreto Convent.
Yeah.
Then a good enough school in Calcutta. And then when we came to Delhi, and in the first year we didn't get through these big schools, I went to a small school. It was the second year of that school. Now it's very big. It's called Gyan Bharti. It's in Saket. But at that time it was new. And there were all kinds of alternate ideas that the teachers and the principal, Mr. Kapoor, at that point had. They wanted to do everything they couldn't do in modern school, Barakhamba. And they set up this new school. And I was there for a year. I felt loved. I felt special. I saw other children being accommodated in the class. If somebody was really good at sports but crap at maths, they were not being humiliated. If I was a little bit of a prodigy with language, my English teacher was giving me gifts of novels that my parents didn't have in the home. So I had been through that experience, and then I go into a school with 45 kids in every class and multiple sections and aggression, just aggression in the air. It's survival of the fittest. And you're 11 years old. Your body is changing.
We know this feeling.
Your psyche is changing. You're acutely aware of the ideas of justice and injustice, and the fact that all children are special. And then you go into this very, very ability oriented, you said academically oriented, but much more than that. It's about only the ones who are going to max their grades matter. Everybody else is to be treated poorly. And it broke me.
You had to shine.
It broke me. I could max that system, but psychologically, I was, there was a rebellion in me. And so that those were my significant schooling years. And now we are living pretty much in the age of anxiety and the age of self-harming adolescents.
Yeah.
Right? We know how rampant it is. Simply, we don't even need to know the data, right? We just need to talk to each other in drawing rooms or look into classrooms, and we know.
And it's there.
And I, it's from watching kids today that I can understand myself better. I was a troubled teenager, and not because I was bad or not good at things. I was just very acutely aware that I was in a system that seemed to be hurting kids. And how could this be the best thing possible? And that shaped me. That shaped me to a large extent. It took a very long time in my adulthood to realize that it also gave me a lot of privilege. It actually took meeting my husband, who came from his village school and his Jaunpur schooling, to show me that the fact that you went to school in Delhi and then you went to DU and then you have all these big brand names, they open doors for you.
Absolutely.
And you must also be thankful for that. But I couldn't see that because there's also pain and trauma associated with it. But DPS Arkipuram, I have to say, had a really good library.
The one in the basement?
Yeah. That huge basement
Unending.
library, right? And I spent a lot of time in that.
Yeah.
I was sickly, and I would get away from sports, and I would spend a lot of time there. And that's where I read John Holt for the first time. There's a book called How Children Fail. And there's another book called How Children Succeed. But How Children Fail is what I picked up because I knew I was very smart, and I knew that I was deliberately failing in this system, and I knew that somebody was telling me why this is connected.
I really want to respond to that with some clinical experience, because it automatically made me think of that. Uh, I work with a lot of young children who come in with the potential diagnosis of, or at least parents looking to pathologize or medicalize what to me appears many times as childhood behavior, ordinary childhood behavior, right? And we call it impulsivity, we call it hyperactivity, we give big labels like ADHD.
Sensitivity.
Yes, right?
Also.
And oftentimes I do find, especially as someone who does not work as a diagnostician and I work only as a treatment specialist, I keep trying to educate parents that you are trying to fit your child into a system that is actually quite redundant. I mean, we haven't evolved since 1947. And you need to really meet your child where he or she is at. And let's not try to immediately pathologize. Rather than doing that, let's try to understand. And a lot of times, like you said, it's anxiety, it's a different wiring, it's my body and mind, my nervous system needs play and needs to be in the ground more than sitting in a structured classroom where teachers are as bored to teach as we are to learn. They want to be in the playground, they want to socialize, they want to kind of do other things. But parents are having a really hard time accepting that. So they keep trying to get me to label the child, and I refuse to, which is why it becomes a little bit of a problem. So when you bring in the example of this book, that why children fail, it really makes me think about the role we as adults and as systems have to play. And it's one of the biggest reasons why, despite being what should I call it, like a pretty much prescriptive system product myself, went to DPS Arkipuram, then went to LSR, then went to North Campus for my master's, then went to Anna Freud Center, like you said, the labels. But it changed, a lot of it transformed me, and a lot of it transformed me because I went to therapy and I understood myself and I understood what was privilege, how to use it. Of course, it's a constant learning, but I cannot work as part of a system anymore. And it helps me understand why I choose to be a private practitioner.
Yeah. And that's your unschooling journey.
Yeah.
That's you unschooling yourself.
But I have to come back to the elephant in the room, because anyone listening in at this point, right? The same question will keep coming to us again. I understand that those systems have not changed, but I do think somewhere a little bit has been upgraded, at least whatever little bit that I know. And I'm not saying this because I am very traditional at heart. The question that comes to you again and again is that, see, whether someone gets into college or not, I today don't think it's mandatory because of the way the world has evolved because of the internet, right? So I don't think that if you need, unless you're doing a technical job like civil engineering or something that requires you to study the technicalities of things, right? Medicine, engineering, or the likes of that. Other than these mainstream subjects, for any other kind of jobs, the question is that how do you, in this unschooling format, study something like that? Because if getting into a traditional college is tough, and does that then shut those doors, and then it opens doors of like even data science or something more fluid? And do children who follow this methodology, do they end up in those kind of fluid careers? I know we don't have the answers, but this is, and I'm only reiterating it because I know that anyone listening in thus far will keep going back to this, I'm resonating with it, but what do I do with this feeling, So that's why I want to just address, I just want to address this feeling again, because I agree with it. But I felt this way. I went to the same school, so I completely understand where you're coming from. And I was not good at math or science. I hate math from the bottom of my heart. But I was lucky enough to have a mom to be like, you are not even looking in that direction. You're good at arts, just do that. And I really enjoyed that. But that's the thing. Which way do you go if you don't follow this traditional setup? Where do the children go?
No, the good news is that there are answers.
Okay.
There are enough examples. There are enough answers. There's what what we have to, begin to, whether we continue with traditional schooling or opt out of it, what we have to cultivate, I feel very strongly as adults, new adults and middle-aged adults, is, diversity of thought.
Yeah.
Is
I agree.
open ourselves to the millions of possibilities that exist outside of the very narrow set of possibilities that we have been trained to see as successful.
Okay.
Right? Now, there are unschoolers who have become doctors, who have become scientists, who are great academicians, who have gone back into higher education and thrived. And, we started with Einstein as one example. But in the unschooling community, as I'm familiar with it, there are any number of young adults who have gone ahead and got their PhDs. And the reason they've been able to thrive in higher education is because they spent their schooling years getting more and more in touch with themselves as learners and seekers. So
then you thrive later.
Yeah. And so my daughters, for example, took their boards. They are taking their boards. In fact, one of my daughters took her A-level exam today.
Okay.
My other two daughters are taking their O-level exams. They're taking them, some of them have taken them at the exact age. I have three daughters.
Yes.
We know.
Lucky
you.
I have three children. So, so what they have given themselves the freedom to do, and we have assumed the freedom to do, is we'll figure out our own milestones.
Yeah.
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 So somebody is taking her exam 5 years late.
Yeah.
Somebody's taking it at exactly the age that she would have. And they're studying together as siblings. My middle daughter's got through her undergrad program and is going to go to college now in August. And the reason that she will be, so one chose academia. One chose to follow her interest and started working at 19. And the youngest is still the youngest. So she's actually thriving the most because she's got these role models at home. Because in a way, I have to say that the children have guided us. And no door actually closes for you. In the unschooling community in India today, and in the WhatsApp groups that I'm part of, children are getting accepted in Oxford. They are going to community colleges in the US. They're going to Ivy League colleges as and when they want to. They are just learning in their own way. And as we know, every single board has an accommodation for private candidates.
Yes.
Except CBSE, which pushes them to NIOS. But the Cambridge board, as well as the IB board, has an accommodation. And a lot of unschoolers will go back to school in class 11 or 12 and just take the board. And a lot of schools, and you've chosen those schools for your children, are actually doing that hybrid model where they are exploring alternate ways, more peaceful ways, calmer ways. The curriculum that you spoke of, that you designed for the Bhutanese school, a lot of schools in the primary level are actually practicing that.
Absolutely.
So I'm oozing to say something actually, that I don't see this as only applicable, like what you're talking about unschooling and not making your own milestones, kind of moving away from the system is, I don't think it's applicable only to school. It's applicable to the larger, to the way you live life. And I've had to, that's my unlearning, and adversity taught me that. But it takes a certain person like Natasha Badhwar to
takes
have
a lot
as
of
parent,
courage.
to have the balls.
Also involvement.
to
I want to say one thing. Look, we all, I'm in a, I'm so fascinated by what what your family is doing in terms of unschooling, but I'm like, that would also mean like giving up a lot. Like you said, school, we all, whether we like it or not, we use it as daycare. We're like, okay, our child goes from 7 o'clock to
In a safe
1:45
environment.
in a safe environment. Let me choose the best of what's available. They all have their problems. And as long as they are thriving or they're happy, and our children are still young, so we don't know how this is going to go in the long run. But right now, they're happy to go to school. It gives us time to work, do whatever we need to do. Now, if I pull my child out of school, I need to figure out how to make sure she's learning or exploring and, not just watching TV all day. Let's just put it
Absolutely,
in a way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
did you also have to like become a lot more involved in their learning, or was it just something that you saw? I mean, of course, your children were older, but how was that
Yeah.
experience?
So what we've done, I think, in this podcast right now is pretty much hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
That the point is not whether you're choosing to go to school or not. The point is, are you paying attention to the needs of the child, the parent, the family, and are you developing in yourself, it is courage, to ask questions, to ask questions of the systems that we have accepted, in whatever way is valid at whatever stage in life. They come upon us. Because of my particularly traumatic schooling years, and my two brothers went to the same school. They didn't have, they didn't come. They had the same experiences, but they did not feel them in their body, or they did not feel it in the same way, right? And children will always, all human beings will respond to the same thing differently. It'll show up differently. I had my breakdown at, let's say, 13 and then 27. My brother had it at 47.
That is short. Yeah.
So, and then we begin to compare notes. and he stops and looks at me and says, "How did you get so wise?" And I was like, "I just broke down early. That's my head start." So it is about asking questions. And did my involvement with my children grow? I would say it grew in a more positive way.
Yeah.
It was from coming to a place where it was very anxiety driven, because I was constantly negotiating with the school bus, with the teacher, in a way that I did not always feel. I often felt a little powerless, because what was I, just another parent? And I was constantly, and this book is a testament of that, constantly building my own self to be a worthy parent, because I had to be able to go to school. And, I still had old feelings, like I start shivering if I see a school principal, because, that's your... but I had to learn to talk to them like an adult and ask questions and see how much they were willing to change for children. And when we moved into unschooling, there was a lot of uncertainty, a fair amount of fear. There was a lot of questions to answer from extended family, from our parents, from their friends, from the children themselves. So the involvement in then became a little more positive, that, we are making the choices and we are living by them.
I mean, I'm sure it created a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, it did.
Because you were being different.
It did. And, you never had an answer to the question, what are you going to do next? And when you're in a system, it's predetermined, right? But it also gives you so much anxiety. Like, here's this really smart kid who's didn't max their 10th, could not do science, could not get through this particular college. And we pathologize the child.
Yes.
That there's something wrong with you. And you free that person from this edifice of predetermined milestones, and they thrive. So taking a gap year, not going to school when the child is anxious. I mean, we all know, right, that all these fevers and stomach aches that we had.
Yeah.
It was just anxiety,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter had asthma at 7 years.
Oh, gosh.
And we are medicating her and we're sending her to school and she's on nebulizers. And then a therapist friend of mine just sat me down and she said, it's anxiety.
But
Oh.
I'm sure
And
it
then
must
you're
have
like,
been,
what have I done? What have I done wrong as a parent?
but
That
I'm sure it must have been tough, and I'm not sure if I read it in your book or it was one of the earlier podcasts I heard where you are talking about how difficult it was for you in that first phase where you were just seeing your child sleep all the
Yeah,
time.
I loved that.
yeah.
I was like, I can
Yeah.
imagine, like, if I were to pull my kid out of school, that is what she would do.
TV and
She would just
sleep,
need to
like,
sleep for a
yeah.
bit. Because it's
Because
horrible
there's
to have
so
to
much
wake them up like that.
exhaustion.
They're very
it's
tired.
There's
exhaustion.
so
They
much
are very
exhaustion.
tired.
Not just physical, but emotional
Yeah. But
But
exhaustion.
I want to know, see, we've understood, your feelings towards the traditional system when you went to school, but you mentioned that there was a certain powerlessness that you felt, when your daughters were in school. Are there any instances that you'd like to share? It just gives a little bit of insight to us.
So a lot of my powerlessness came from what I would say is my personality.
Fair enough.
Kind of a timidity to take on authority, a general social anxiety.
I'm very surprised to hear that because an extended introduction for Natasha Badhwar. She is not timid. She is one of the coolest people that at least I have learned about.
No, and
she just does nothing
So I
conventional.
taught myself.
Everything about her is
I taught
unconventional.
myself.
Yeah.
And my husband, on the other hand, who didn't grow up in the city, just seemed to have this brash confidence.
Yeah.
My daughters, our first child's first school interview to go into nursery after her preschool, and the principal's fascinated by this man. She's just going on talking to them, and I'm like, are they flirting?
I did not expect the conversation to go this way.
He's not got that, like, okay,
So you're saying he
I'm
taught you?
presenting.
He taught
I
you?
learned a lot from him.
Yeah.
I did learn a lot from him.
That's great.
Because in my head, there's a certain hierarchy of authority in the city. And you must behave in a certain way. And I had trained myself. This is the mask you wear.
Good girl.
Yeah. And then I'd been a journalist. We'd done all kinds of really adventurous things, but all by learning the rules of social behavior. And here was this guy, meko na aata hai, na meko seekhna hai. What's wrong with me? Main to theek hu. And, just walking through doors like that. And I'm like, okay, this is possible.
Maybe that's why you were attracted to him.
Entirely possible. Yeah. I mean, obviously.
No, but I really think there's so much value in that because we were in this whole nursery admission, nightmare a while ago. It's a race.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, all admissions and all. And my husband looked at me and he was like, stop being so desperate. The school should want you. You shouldn't want the school so badly.
100%.
And I was like, let me just rewire how I'm thinking. So I applied to one school. I was like, they will have to take us. I mean, he's also alumni of that school, so I had a slightly better chance. But I just rewired how I was thinking. I was like, the school should want us. We shouldn't act so desperate to get into school. And that was the confidence that you're talking about, that sort of like I borrowed from him.
Yeah.
But it is so important maybe for the people who are tuning in. Like you have to find that within
I was stressed
yourself.
on your behalf, Kathy. Don't worry.
Everyone
was stressed
was.
enough for the two
They were
of
like,
us.
you're crazy. How
Yeah.
can you just apply to one school? Like, what's
Yeah, and
wrong
I
with
think
you?
referencing our episode with Gloria, where she talks about whose need is it. We both were talking about whose need is it. I think parents should really look into themselves about whose need is it, why is it there, their own experience of schooling, etc.
Yeah.
And again, move towards a little bit more reflection when
And
imposing
really
these
seriously
standards.
examine our fears because they are inherited. They
Oh,
are
of course.
completely out of date.
Parenting is
Nothing
intergenerational.
is, yeah,
Yes.
and this decision in my generation to unschool our kids is also kind of sitting on this base of privilege. It's because I have a home full of books.
Yeah.
It's because I have my education and my husband's background to guide the children, to be able to have these flexible jobs, flexible
available.
work roles, to be able to either he's working or I'm working, and to be able to access all of this privilege that we are able to do because of the hard work our parents put in. So I'm absolutely, we know from our lived experience that every generation is actually living the fears of the previous one. My mother was 4 years old in 1947 when she came to Delhi as a refugee child.
Yeah.
She could never stop hoarding food all her life.
Yeah.
And, we would have to say,
Stop it.
Mama,
Yeah.
why do you have 2 refrigerators and why are both of them full of dry fruits?
Yeah.
It's true,
Right?
I
But it's
mean,
that
I keep
trauma just
reminding
carried
some of
on.
my adult patients when they talk about their grandparents,
Yeah.
it's making me think of a few where, they could never grow in their business. They're just constantly saving. And I'm like, think about why. Where were they when
Yeah,
they started?
it's coming from
Yeah.
some.
And partition was,
So my parents were
brutal.
trembling when we went in for a school admission. And I had that memory in my body. And somebody had to say, Tere ko hua kya hai?
Yeah.
You're so right. And I think that's what we're all sort of doing. There was one TED talk by someone called Ken Robinson that I want to reference because it's a good entry point to think differently about schooling. And it's called Why Schools Kill Creativity.
Yeah.
And he's one of the first people who said that, yes, it was the factory age worker. That's why you graduate in batches. Batches is
Yeah.
such an industrial term.
Yeah.
So you were creating people for the
Yes, we've
workforce.
talked about
Yeah.
this before.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where you're learning. And now I think something that what you're doing that was very brave, but is something we all need to remind ourselves, the careers of the future. We don't even know what those careers are. And our
Absolutely.
schooling systems are not actually the right place to
But our
prepare
kids
our
do.
children
I
for
have
them.
a kid who's told me he wants to become a stand-up comedian. He already
They
knows.
know, of
Yeah.
course, they know much
Which is
better.
so
I love
good.
that.
They know
I
much
love
better,
that.
They
yeah.
know much better.
But the way AI is changing, like the landscape, like you think like it's just going to be the same, the career path is going to be so different. Like I said, we don't know what the world is going to need.
Yeah.
So it's more important to build happy or to sort of like encourage happy, productive,
But there's
less
one
anxious
theme
generations.
that I'm very curious to know about, which is that when you were making this decision, were you at all anxious as a parent, as a teacher, as a writer, as a journalist, to about socialization? Because when I think about friendship, I've written about it in your memoir classes that it is one of the most beautiful relationships of life, and I'm blessed to have great school friends who are still my closest friends, and then college. And so was that a worry that how are they going to make friends? I mean, friendship, dating, relationships, romance, the works, all of it.
Yeah. And you know what you're naming is all of these things that we never name. Why are we so anxious that you have to go to this particular school? It's class.
200. Yeah.
Yeah. It's network. Why do you have to go to Stephens? Because उसके बाद जो तुम्हारे दोस्त बनेंगे ना जिंदगी भर काम आएंगे. दोस्ती नहीं necessarily, but
That network.
Yeah.
all of these things,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
we might as well name it. No, why pretend?
It's very interesting you say this because I'm going to give an example. I have to give it.
Nangi can't
Where a young girl that I work with in a well-known school, I have worked with her in the past, and she actually feels really uncomfortable surrounded by extremely wealthy people, right? And as she got into it, and we're talking middle school, I've given both of them this example where she started telling me why it's uncomfortable that her friends are constantly burdened by their mums to date boys from certain families and have romantic feelings.
Can you
for
imagine?
Certain boys
At like
only
12, 13?
with certain surnames. They're already planning their entire lives.
At
we
12?
are
Yes.
living in such regressive times. It's
And I'm
not
like,
bizarre.
funny.
It's bizarre.
It's not funny.
Getia, you and I living under a rock or what's
No,
happening?
I know all of this. Come on, I know we know all of this. This is even how networking
But at
within
12,
Delhi society
but no,
has
Delhi
happens.
society, adults doing it is very different.
It's not. It's
It's
the same
not
thing.
different,
It's the same
thing.
parents.
These are
It's the same thing.
12-year-olds.
It's not different. It's the same parents encouraging it in their
Yes.
kids.
Yes.
But to
the
encourage
same
it in
thing.
someone who's 10, 11, 12?
I mean,
But
maybe 14.
even if you
So
don't
this
verbally
whole
encourage it, you're
business-
modeling
Yeah,
it,
you're
right?
modeling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I often talk about it even in terms of school admissions and all. There is, I remember discussing it in a supervision where there is the anxiety of why do I want a certain school? Exactly what Natasha is saying. That it is because it is catering to a certain class, a certain social
100%.
milieu.
Look, we're
That
all
is
guilty
there,
of
yeah.
it. I mean, I chose a school based on are my friends' kids going to that school? Is she going to be able to get along with people in that school? I mean, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And we're all guilty
so
of
to
it.
some extent it's comfort.
Yeah.
You do need a community. And then beyond that, there's also a lot of this veneer. It's a veneer for other things. And somewhere that comes in the way of a child having an authentic childhood.
Yeah.
You know, ideally,
Or not having one at all, a stolen
you
childhood.
spoke about grades, right? About batches.
Yeah.
Now, an ideal childhood, you should be able to make friends with people older than you, make friends with people younger than you.
Yeah.
A good school, instead of actually putting all the bright kids in one section and all the kids who are not doing so well in the commerce and arts section, and then treating them, kind of giving them a sense of failure. Instead of that, wouldn't a good school mix them?
Ideally.
Wouldn't a good school say, the sports and arts and sciences are equally important for
we say it, but we don't practice.
We don't practice it, right? So what our real feeling was when the children agreed to quit school was relief, because for at least 4 or 5 years till then, the anxiety of trying to fit in, the anxiety of watching children being bullied near you, around you, the sexism in the school not being named, this. We are not living in a progressive time. We are actually living in a very regressive time.
In fact,
I mean, we know from the way masculinity and femininity is being modeled in very young children today, and the way the media is coming, portraying it, whether it's films, whether it's the news. I mean, you literally, in a decent home, cannot switch on the TV because of what your children are going to get exposed to, right?
You can't.
We're simply talking about hate, sexualization, violence constantly. And the school, because it's part of the larger system, cannot anymore say that peace is more important than war, because we're living in a time where the state is telling you that you're anti-national if you're a pacifist. So to actually quit that system and let the children, come back home was a relief, because my children were not breathing anymore.
But did your children tell you that they wanted to leave? And
I began to see it, so we did, so I'll just quickly go over the chronology, right? So I came with a certain kind of experience of big, wonderful schools in the city. My husband came from a certain kind of experience. As soon as the children needed to go to school, we moved out of Delhi into a very quiet, a very unsnobbish suburb to be able to live in a place where they could cycle on the road outside without traffic, and where we could just live a little more peacefully. We could have parks, we could have trees. And we moved out. Then we said, okay, what is the finest school in this area? They went there. Finest school began to get a lot of pressure about academics and board ki tayari and stuff like that. We said, if yehi karna hai, to then let us go to a more mainstream school, but also a more aware school, a school that talks about more progressive values. So we chose, then they began to kind of bus back into the city to go to those schools. But while all the right things were being said, it was just a time since the middle, the post 2010, where you can't do anything progressive. Where it's normal to be Islamophobic. It's normal to tell girls to be in their place, to know their place. To allow boys to be violent because or bullies because they must not feel uncomfortable. So for ever since they turned 9 or 10, they began to change, and then I'm trying so hard to stay connected with them, and then stay connected with their teachers and with the school, and participate more and more in the system to see how it can work, till we reached a point where we realized that it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to work with these kids.
Yeah. And that's also
and the children are displaying an anxiety that we have to respond to.
Which we then go on to, I mean, it only compounds over time, and we then go on to pathologize and diagnose. Because they are not fitting into a system that was created.
But do they ever romanticize the notion of school? Like, I mean, come on, they're young children. Like, the grass can be greener on the other side.
It's hard for them to romanticize the idea of school as it is for anybody who's ever been to school. But did the children have their own new set of anxieties? Yes,
they did.
Were they worried that they would not be able to integrate with the same friends again? Yes. Were they worried that they would be seen as losers? Yes. Did some of them actually create their own internalized set of standards to keep up to, just to prove that we didn't quit because we're not good enough? We quit because we know how to do it our own way. So we did actually then create, and then many families fall into that trap, that we don't go to school, but we made it to Oxford. We don't go to school, but my daughter's working here, there. So ways of compensating, because you don't want to feel like you're the odd one out.
Yeah.
There is a need to belong.
Absolutely.
And that's a human need.
It's a very strong need.
Yeah.
So I'll come back to what gave us some kind of a huge comfort was being able to belong to a community of unschoolers, of being able to make connections with people. So the only thing that changed was that we were not meeting them every day, and we were not necessarily living in the same city. And that's another thing, do you realize that we socialize far more than any one of us wants to?
Yeah.
We don't want to attend 30 birthdays in the class every year with our child. We don't want to necessarily have to do our own anniversary, parents' anniversary, brother's
it's true.
This is like privilege.
Yeah. It's Indian. I think it's very Indian that to be gussoed into every little relationship, and it's obligation.
It's also one of the nicer parts. It's both sides of a coin, right? Like, there are two sides of it. One is, of course, there is sense of community here is so strong that, like, there's a sense of belonging in multiple places. Whereas a more capitalist life in the West is a little more isolating. There's a sense of belonging.
And I think that this is not.
But
it's across the country, right? It's across all classes. Like, doing something, celebrating, or community coming together is for everybody. So I think that as a society, we're obsessed with getting together.
Yeah, and what the pandemic helped us also with. It did help us, right? Was question the rituals of belonging.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't turn up for this party, or if I don't wear such and such clothes and go for this marriage, I will not be thrown out. I can still belong and be myself. That's what we need.
And belong where I want to and need it, not just for the sake of, I've known them for 30 years of my life, 40 years of my life, 50 years
and a lot of this, tum aaye nahi, and agli baar hum tumhe bulayenge nahi, which is a big threat. Ya hum bura maan jayenge. I mean, Zoom call, video call.
Yeah.
Everything. There was a new sense of intimacy that the pandemic brought.
Right?
Yeah. It did bring that, but it also brought a new sense of togetherness, where you're right, it didn't feel forced and you only did what you really wanted to do. So that helped. But I actually agree with Getty. It's two sides of a coin. There's lots to be valued because you don't feel lonely, you don't feel isolated. And I mean, I'm a big fan of celebrations. But that doesn't mean that I don't like.
I think it's a personality.
Yeah,
I'm not even talking about celebrations. What I'm saying is that we assume that going to school every day and meeting the same kids every day will give us the best friendships of our life.
Yeah. Agreed.
Now, that's not the only way
Way
in
to
which
do that.
friendships
That's
get
true.
formed.
I don't have any close friends
And
from
sometimes
school.
you can be extremely isolated and extremely
Yeah.
lonely in spaces that you're supposed to belong to. And unschooling is again a permission where you can be yourself and still ask for belonging.
But it's such a hard path to tread. And again, I had a moment of self realization in this conversation right now because I realized that what were my motivations for choosing my daughter's school, which will eventually be my son's school as well, is that when I was young, my mom contested 2 elections in some village in UP. And some of my childhood memories are that I would just go to the park
Yeah.
over there, whatever. There wasn't a park, it was an empty field. And I would play with the children there. I mean, in a safe way. I had an adult accompanying me, but it would be anyone's children. It could be like the laborers' children, it could be the, the local landlord's children. Everyone would just play together. I also went to a school where there were people from all walks of life. There were well-to-do, not so well-to-do, middle class, upper middle class, everyone. For some reason, I maybe have rebelled against the fact that I didn't relate to everybody while I was growing up. I didn't see the value, maybe till now, in having such a diverse exposure that I put my child in a school. I love the curriculum. I love the fact that they're a really warm, holistic space. But the one drawback or the one criticism that school gets is that it's the uber privileged.
Yeah.
Right? That
it's
is
not diverse.
and
yeah.
it's not diverse at all. And in fact, for some reason that was, and this is a moment of real honesty and self-reflection, for some reason that was a draw for me. The fact that it was just people like us, you know what I mean? And I wanted to thank this conversation a little bit because it just made me realize that that's not my child's need. That was my maybe my own issue that I'm projecting into that decision. Luckily, it's a great school, so no harm done. But I do think that what we were talking about, it is our own insecurities or our own projections that are shaping so many of our decisions, that when we strip away from that, we really start thinking about things like why unschooling could work or why following an alternative path could work. So maybe the courage comes from looking inward
I
first.
actually no, I actually 100% agree, because for us, as we know, school was all academic. Although I found the best friends in school. I'm sitting across one of my school friends today. So a lot of my close friends, even today, are from my school. But I've also ended up choosing a school for my son where culture, ethos, and it's a very, very nourishing environment. The teachers are very nourishing towards the children. And I didn't really have that growing up in school. As nice as the teachers were in their own way, it was not an emotionally nourishing environment. And I think that was one of the key reasons why I was very excited to send Sabar to the school he goes to. So I actually do echo what Getty is saying. Somewhere we do, it is our need. So Nanki, you're right.
But I have that question for you. Was the early years in school very different from middle school and high school? Because that's something I question. I'm like, okay, I love, you go into the school that my daughter's in, the classrooms are they're like a little play zone.
Yeah,
they are
they're very
so
cute.
lovely.
You
There's
actually
a
asked a
little
question that I was
tent
gonna,
Yeah.
I was going to
and
comment
then
on, but
you
I'll wait for
see
Natasha.
the year one classrooms, you see the later classrooms, and they start looking more structured,
Yeah.
and everything
Yeah.
starts changing. So how did the experience of schooling change from the early years to because you pulled your daughters out at 13 and 15?
Middle school.
Pretty much middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the disintegration of every value that is espoused in primary school and practiced in primary
Yeah.
school. Because suddenly, you go to class 6 and your teacher opens with, you're not children anymore.
Yeah.
You're preparing for the boards. And you're like, wait a minute.
Mm.
Weren't we all about holistic development?
But I've said it to Ravneet as well, and I say it to the families I work with, that up till grade 5, primary school, all schools are brilliant. And then you hit middle school and the
Yeah.
cognitive load goes up, and that's all child development
It goes up,
becomes
the child's
about.
emotional needs, and psychological needs become so diverse and so important. And we just want to
If anything, they become more
completely,
important.
we completely want to invisibilize those.
Yes.
We want to put pressure on them to keep it all inwards. And it's not a surprise that, we have the generation that we have
Yes.
right now,
In terms of mental health problems.
in terms
yes.
of mental health
Yeah,
problems.
because the sources of distress
not a
are
surprise.
just more than ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And they're all externally induced.
Yeah. And I want to say it's not that the unschooled child will not have mental health issues. They do. But the unschooling life gives you the time and space to look at it honestly, to not feel, पर स्कूल तो जाना ही पड़ेगा, पर ये तो करना ही पड़ेगा ना बेटा. So somehow you are propping up your child, putting cold water packs and letting the cat sleep with them because you have to take that exam, come what may. No, you're able to say nothing matters any more than your well-being.
Then you.
Yeah.
And that's such an important
and
message.
You can take the time.
And honestly, that's
and when
one
they
of the
have
reasons.
that autonomy, they come back and they thrive.
That's honestly one of the reasons why, as adults, we don't take care of ourselves. Because maybe throughout our childhood, nobody gave us the importance to be like, look, what matters to you? So you're almost guilty. Like if I take out time to go to the gym, I'm like, I'm not spending time with the kids. I'm not working. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And then I have to override those thoughts to be like, no, your mental and physical well-being is also important. So that is interesting. But I also want to say, I mean, not to completely demonize schools. The schools are also maybe trying. The system is going to take really long to change. It's an interconnected system, right? Like you have like the schooling system, then the board system, then the college system. And if you need your children to get 98% to get into college, then your school's hands are tied.
And the financial needs of a business.
The financial
it's
needs.
a business at the end of the day.
It is, exactly. And some children still thrive in these sort of environments.
There are many components to it, right? Without going into it, we addressed it in a previous episode with Mrs. Adams, but it was in Natasha's memoir class that I got to finally express a traumatic experience that I had with a teacher in high school. I still remember it, even after having healed it in therapy. The intergenerational transmission of what teachers also end up passing because they are frustrated. They are dealing with their own mental health. Teaching is a badly paid profession in general. It's undervalued.
School teachers definitely.
They are burnt out to another level, which I just don't know how they're coping. And that does filter down to the children. And again, we are not keeping all those things in mind even when we are picking schools. We're just picking the system for the brand that it has managed to create over all those years. And we don't even realize, we don't even get teachers to get into a reflective space to think about what parts of themselves they're carrying into the classrooms. So that's just part of the system and the systemic problem. And I think that's why I now went back to joining a school, as much as I love schools.
So what I would say is that I'm not at all advocating that everybody should quit school. I'm saying that all of us need to practice and build resilience and autonomy so that whatever system we have to negotiate with, we are able to believe in ourselves that the individual is more important than the system and that I have rights and I can ask for those, and not in a rebellious way, in an absolutely peaceful way.
Do you see the unschooling community growing? Like since now it is a community, because community is important. It's a biological or evolutionary need rather of human beings, right? To belong to something. And like you've already spoken about, the community gave you the ability to actually step away from the school system without feeling too lost. Has the community grown over the last few years?
It's all over the world. The unschooling community is growing very steadily. It's
I saw an Instagram reel. I always bring back an Instagram reel in. But it was basically about a parent who had chosen to unschool their child. And this is in the West, so it's not that relevant to the Indian experience. But still, there's a takeaway. It said like when their children were going to school, they were just constantly rushing to get the kids up, rushing to get the kids to school, rushing to pick them up and take them to whatever after school activity. And everything was by the clock. And they were like, what a miserable way to live. Our children are unhappy. We are unhappy. Pull them out of school. Let's just do everything on our own terms. And they said it actually repaired their relationship with their children. Which of course, like you said, it depends from family to family what works for you, but it does take a lot of courage. So to paving newer and more courageous paths.
Thank you.
Yes, like I said, it takes a certain...
And courage is contagious, so when we hang out with each other...
Okay, but now I really have to ask... I just really have to ask something that I've been dying to ask, and I told Nanki that I really want to discuss this because Nanki, of course, has been raving about your writing workshops. And she did say this when we were not on camera earlier that it's been life changing for her. And I want to know today, as a young parent, that my son is only 4.5, and he loves reading, and I love reading. And in what way can I encourage writing from a young age without being overbearing? Because I really do believe it is life altering. I think it's one of the most incredible things to do for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have no idea how to do
I
this
would say
without.
start with doing her memoir workshop.
That is 100% what I'll be signing up for the minute we go home
It
today.
was transformation.
Yeah, so I
And this is
definitely
coming from a
want
therapist who also went to therapy and goes to supervision and does lots to take care of her mental health. But I think Natasha knows this. I'm
Yeah,
very
you-
vocal about it.
and
I
you've
could
been
not
raving
recommend
about
it
it.
more.
You've been
Yes.
raving about it. So
She
I,
is
I really
brilliant.
just want, and I know this, I've kind of veered off topic, but I'm sorry I couldn't keep it in anymore. I just had to ask.
No, it's not off topic at all, actually. You love reading, and your child loves reading, and it's kind of connected, right? Because you're just modeling reading, right? You've got a house full of books.
Yeah.
And like me, you will learn that at one point, the child will begin to read things that you have never imagined. Or not want to read the things that you think are age appropriate and good for them. And I was just shocked. I saved all my books for my daughters to read, and they did not want them.
Oh my God, that's a
They
tough
did
feeling
not
to deal
want
with.
to look at my Enid Blytons. They did not want to look at my Pride and Prejudice. And I was like, how is this happening? But I saved it all for you. But they brought home science fiction, and they brought home historical speculative fiction. I didn't even know what it was, because they live in a different world, and
Yeah.
they will discover it differently. And all the permission that they got from their parents was follow your interest, right? I actually stumbled over this one hugely because I thought reading is like reading writing to is sorted, na? So this the mummy will teach you. The how to buy books, I wanted to teach them how to buy books. Is this a one time read, or is this because I didn't grow up having the money to buy whatever book I wanted. I grew up examining libraries, but they are not growing up in that kind of one salary home.
They're growing up in a Kindle generation.
They're,
Yeah.
they're growing up in a very different time. They are reading fan fiction. Who knew
Yeah,
what that is?
yeah.
They've got accounts on very different social media. We don't even know about
Yeah.
those than
Are your
I
children
do.
on social media?
Very different ones.
Okay.
They're not on the social media
That you, yeah,
that we know
yeah.
about.
Everything is generational, actually.
Yeah.
I guess he gets
So
his
then
eyes
I
wide.
learned,
Where are
it
they?
took me time to back off,
Yeah.
to step back and keep pushing Gabriel Garcia Marquez, like, don't you? Because, okay, these things shaped my life, but they will choose what will shape their lives. And then in their own time, they will come and read whatever is lying around in the house as well. And writing will happen the same way. You'll model it.
Okay.
I mean, I had a
Basically.
worrying moment with my daughter, but I have to just let things go. But right now, our kids are 4, so we can still have a little bit of influence. So I'm like, what do you want to be when you grow up? So she says, I want to be on TV. So I was like, oh, that's not a great answer. Then I was like, no, why don't you want to be an astronaut? I just put the thought in her head. So the next time someone asked her, what do you want to be? She just said it because she just heard me say it. She was like, I want to be an astronaut. And I was like, yes, she said, I want to be an astronaut. But I know
Subconsciously
that's
planted
just
it.
coming because I've like fed it to her.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like there's so much of what we we want our children to do that we project it on them.
Which is only natural.
Which is only natural. But some of that we're also not modeling. And then we expect our children to do it, which is, something I have to keep reminding myself. If I want my child to read, I need to be reading as opposed to being on my phone. If I want my child to play sports, then they have to grow up in an environment where that's part of our life in some way.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we want our children to do the things we never did. But
They're not going to do it
Then
if we're
why
not
would they
doing
do
it.
that?
Biggest learning as a parent, my biggest learning, you want them to do it, you do it.
Yeah.
You want
That's
them to
the
go out
only
in the
way.
park, you go
You
out
go
in the
out.
park.
Yeah.
And you want them to watch quality cinema.
You you should watch it. Yeah.
Don't put on Real Housewives, Getty.
No, we don't watch Real Housewives
But I think,
together.
I mean, that's actually what I was going to wrap up with, that we didn't get to more of your book, but what I was going to tell you earlier off camera is that I think what I've learned about you today is how you have unlearned as a result of unschooling, as a result of just everything about being a parent. Thanks to your title, My Daughter's Mom. It just means so much more to me. And I think that's where my experience as not yet being a parent comes in, because I have always made the Freudian slip of referring your book to people and saying, read it, and called it My Mom's Daughter. Always. I make the same mistake again and again. And I truly am my mom's daughter. From taking her profession to her face to everything. I mean,
But we all have done it. Like me, I said I will never get into journalism because I'd seen my mom as a journalist. I was like, this is just something I will never do. And somehow, where am I?
Yeah.
We all turn into our parents in some way or the other.
Yeah.
but I'm very happy about
And
it.
so long as we're
Yeah.
doing it mindfully,
Yeah.
so long as we're doing it in our own way,
Yeah.
it's a
And
beautiful,
ready to
it's a beautiful
unlearn.
thing.
And as long as we're taking the good
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
who they were, and look, we've all been raised by some incredible people, and if we can take the positives from that and maybe
100%.
find a way to put aside the not so nice bits, then that is of
Those
course
are
that
also
says
part
something.
of the good enough.
Of the good enough.
Okay, thank you so much, Natasha.
Thank you. It's been
For-
so lovely talking to all three
It's
of you.
been so lovely and it's been therapeutic and we've learned some very, very interesting things. And I know Getty and I are going to go back and just be like, what are we doing? Are we doing it right?
No, but this podcast for me and Ravneet is really, we go back and we're like, yeah, I've become that parent. Like we have summer holidays coming up and I'm like, my kids are going to do nothing. So people are
Same.
messaging me saying what classes, what this, what that. I'm like, they go to school for like so many hours a day. My son's a year and a half. I was like, they're doing nothing. We're going to be in the pool eating ice cream. You want to join us? Please come.
I've just
know?
convinced a set of parents I work with who are forcing their teenage child to do this class, do this. And he spoke up for himself. So that was a win.
That was a big
Summer
win.
holidays.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but that was a lot of unlearning for me. Also, my big achievement is exactly the same as Getty's. We're doing absolutely nothing. We're just going to bum around and we'll do whatever he
And
wants.
doing nothing is amazing.
Yeah.
I love doing
Yeah.
nothing. It's like the best feeling
Yeah.
in the world.
It enables you to do more when you're recharged and reset.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you
Yeah.
burn out, as do children. The children do way
And
more.
whatever
than
you
we do.
end up doing when you're doing nothing, it really connects you to yourself and to your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an important takeaway that gets reiterated for me and Rivneet over and over again. But thank you for joining us. And we need another episode maybe on the book at some point of time.
Yes, please.
2 books.
Would love
My
to.
Daughter's
books.
Mom
Love to.
and Immortal for a Moment.
And the
Yeah.
third one should be out.
Yes, it's out soon. Natasha's.
Yours also.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
so much. Yeah.